So I finally got a teeny tiny wheel and I'm so excited. So today I'm unboxing this wheel and I'm just giving it a test run and I'm going to show you how I've been able to use it to help me create a whole collection of tiny pots for a recent exhibition. So there are a few different reasons why I really love this mini wheel. One, it's portable. It comes with universal adapters, so it's perfect for traveling if you're out and about and need to plug it in really quick. It's also, for something so small, it's actually surprisingly quite powerful. You can slow it down or speed it up depending on what you're making. And the best part, it also has an integrated like bat system, so no having to cut pots off the wheels with a little sort of wire. You can just leave them whilst they're wet. So if you just leave them to dry, there's no warping and no distortion. So as you can see here, I am giving this wheel a first try. It really felt weird at first because I'm so used to teaching on bigger wheels when I do workshops, but like anything, it takes practice. But if you are so used to watching something like pottery throwdown, you will know that the cylinder is a basic foundation for most pieces, whether this be bowls or vases, and obviously this is a fundamental on both big and small wheels. So at first I just felt like I was all fingers and thumbs, but with time it got easier. But if you don't like getting clay everywhere, I would recommend trying some small tools to try open it out and when lifting those walls, because it can get proper messy. Over a week or so, I started to then experiment with more and more shapes. Long before I knew it, I had a whole lineup of teeny tiny pots drying in the conservatory. But the problem was, me being me, when I'm doing these sorts of projects, I just get way too excited. Sometimes my patience can kind of lack a little. I rush them in the microwave just because the outsides look dry. What I didn't realise though, as I was then popping goggles on, it was all about the safety, thinking of like, oh, maybe they could explode. That's exactly what happened. Boom, they went in the kiln. So what was happening each time was trialing all of these new little pots, putting them in the kiln. The same thing happened on the first try, the second try, and the next. So I realized eventually that just because the outside was dry, the insides were still holding a lot of moisture, and that's why they were exploding. So at this point, you probably guessed it. Yes, I was feeling a bit deflated. I'd put so much time into the work, trialing and testing, see what could happen. And I had an exhibition deadline coming up for which these pots were to be featured in. Plus, I never tried a bisque firing in a microwave kiln before. So if you don't know what a bisque firing is, it's basically when the clay is allowed to harden up in the kiln. So yeah, that wasn't one of my best ideas under pressure. So what I did do, what I always do when I'm stuck in like a creative rut, I just went outside, I took a step back, and what was the best? It was just spending some time in and amongst the greenery, in amongst the trees. What's always great is when I'm out with Bo and Smidge, they're always on hand to cheer me up. So whilst creativity, it just shows, is really unpredictable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. What was great during this time, I could kind of focus in on what was going right as well. So one thing that was going right was Wonky Pot launch. So these pieces from the launch that were created by caregivers within the community, they were taken out in their bisque firing and they were then glazed. They were sent out to them, and those people then started sharing stories and testimonials around what they created. That absolutely, for me, is one way to kind of spark curiosity and sort of creative confidence within individuals when they have sort of stories to share. I feel clay is one way to kind of express themselves through it. Another highlight of this time was discovering Mako Jungle gem glazes. These were the glazes that had been used for these pots that they'd created. They're beautiful, they're unpredictable. Can't wait to use them with other participants moving forward. So as we head back to the problematic pots that were created by myself, I finally found a solution, which was a cheap little mini oven that I bought online. And guess what? It actually worked. And so the pots were popping no more. It turns out, though, with a little bit of patience and a little bit of research, that goes a long way. So once the pots were fully dry, I then put them in the microwave kiln, but I had no idea how hot these things get. So one of my first firings even melted part of my glove. The actual mishap then triggered an idea. So burning material onto this fire clay was where I started to go. And I created some pretty fascinating textures and patterns by in doing so. So I used a bit of hair that was in a brush, and I know it sounds pretty gross, but to be fair, people use pug hair, people use horsehair, they use all these different bits of material. And actually, these sorts of different materials actually create like thread-like patterns, and I suppose they almost look like nerve endings, and it reminded me of our body's nervous system. So even though I'm still like learning the perfect temperatures, getting them right for best firing, etc., I'm still experimenting, and in doing so, I'm building up the courage to even try other sort of techniques, such as cyanotype, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a sort of blue sort of print, or blue and white print, should I say, that is exposed in the sunlight, and when you wash it off in places, you should get sort of white and blueprints occurring. At first, I thought nothing was happening during this stage of the cyanotype process, but the prints were developing very slowly, and the results were some of the most intricate patterns I've ever made through a process like that. So it's crazy to imagine that none of this would have ever happened if I hadn't bought that teeny tiny wheel. So let's just put it this way. You will be happy to know, or I hope you'll be happy to know, that in the end, all of those tiny pots, however fragmented and imperfect, they were actually exhibited alongside some of my old wireworks. If you follow me on socials, you've probably seen those, and they're pink sort of interwoven sort of structures. At some point, I'd love to be able to integrate that with this ceramic stuff that I'm doing, but that's for another day. And now that's all wrapped up, we're back in the studio, as you can see just in this video. But I've now got a new mission ahead of me. As we head into 2026, I want to use small wheels like this to help parents, teachers, caregivers, healthcare workers get out of their heads and into their creative flow. Small wheels are portable, accessible, perfect for pop-up events and workshops, which is why I'm renovating my studio into what should be the Wonky Pot Initiative hub. So I'd love you to join me on this next chapter. So don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on all my socials for all the latest, and the links are in the description.